My sister looked me dead in the eye and said, "Pack your things, you have 3 days." I was standing in the kitchen where Mom used to make us pancakes every Sunday morning, holding a cardboard box of my childhood memories, when I realized my own flesh and blood had just made me homeless. But what she didn't know was that I'd already found Dad's secret will hidden in his desk drawer, and everything she thought she owned was about to crumble. Let me take you back to before everything fell apart, when I still believed family meant unconditional love and protection. Our childhood home on Maple Street wasn't just a house. It was the sanctuary where Dad taught me to ride my bike in the driveway, where Mom and I planted roses in the garden every spring, where Christmas mornings were filled with laughter echoing through rooms that held 40 years of memories. The creaky third step on the staircase, the window seat where I'd read for hours, the kitchen island where we'd gather for family dinners. Every corner of that house was woven into the fabric of who I was. My sister Emma and I had grown up in those walls together. She was 2 years older, and I idolized her. She was the one who braided my hair before school, who snuck me cookies when I was grounded, who held my hand during thunderstorms. Our parents, Margaret and Robert, had built something beautiful there. Not just a home, but a legacy of love that I thought would bind us together forever. When Mom got sick with cancer 3 years ago, I was the one who moved back home to care for her. I quit my job in the city, ended a promising relationship, and dedicated every waking moment to making sure she was comfortable. I drove her to every chemotherapy appointment, sat with her through the sleepless nights, and held her hand as she took her final breath in the bedroom where she'd raised us. Dad followed 6 months later. The doctor said it was his heart, but I knew he simply couldn't live without her. I'd never seen a man so broken. In his final weeks, he'd sit in his study for hours, staring at old photo albums, whispering to pictures of Mom like she was still there. I was the one who found him that Tuesday morning, peaceful in his chair, surrounded by all the memories they'd created together. During those devastating months, Emma visited occasionally, always with some excuse about work or her husband's schedule. She lived just 2 hours away, but somehow I was the one handling everything. The medical bills, the funeral arrangements, the endless paperwork that death demands. I told myself she was grieving in her own way, that some people just couldn't handle being around sickness and death. What I didn't know was that she was already planning my destruction. The reading of the will happened on a gray October morning that felt like the world was ending. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and disappointment. Emma sat across from me, her manicured hands folded perfectly in her lap, wearing the black dress she'd bought for Mom's funeral. She looked composed, almost expectant. "To my daughter Emma," he read in his monotone voice, "I leave the family home at 1247 Maple Street and all its contents, trusting that she will maintain the legacy Margaret and I built there." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs, my vision blur at the edges. Emma's face remained perfectly neutral, but I caught the slightest upturn at the corner of her mouth. "And to my daughter Sarah," he continued, "I leave my personal effects and the sum of $10,000, with my love and gratitude for the care she provided during our final months." $10,000 for 3 years of my life, for holding Mom's hand through chemo, for changing Dad's medication schedule, for sacrificing everything I'd built for myself to make sure they weren't alone. Emma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I know you expected more." But there was something in her eyes, a coldness I'd never seen before, a satisfaction that made my stomach turn. This wasn't grief or sympathy. This was victory. She said, "Don't worry. You can stay in the house as long as you need to get back on your feet. We're family, after all." That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling where I'd once stuck glow-in-the-dark stars, trying to process what had happened. I'd given up everything for our parents, and Emma, who'd visited maybe a dozen times in 3 years, had inherited everything. The injustice of it burned in my chest like acid. But I told myself to be grateful. At least I had a roof over my head while I figured out how to rebuild my life from nothing. I should have known she was lying. 3 weeks later, Emma showed up at the front door with a locksmith and a smug expression that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. "Sarah, we need to talk," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "I've decided to sell the house. The market is hot right now, and honestly, I think it's time for a fresh start for both of us." I stared at her, my coffee mug trembling in my hands. "Sell the house? Emma, this is our childhood home. Mom and Dad built their entire lives here. You can't just—" She interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. "I can do whatever I want. It's my house now, and I've already found a buyer. You have 3 days to pack your things and find somewhere else to live." The cruelty of it took my breath away. 3 days? Emma, I don't have anywhere to go. I gave up everything to take care of them. My job, my apartment, my— "That was your choice," she said, examining her nails with practiced indifference. "Maybe if you'd focused on building your own life instead of living in the past, you wouldn't be in this situation." Each word was a dagger, precisely aimed at every insecurity I'd ever had. But it was what she said next that truly destroyed me. "Besides," she continued, "maybe this will teach you to be more independent. You've been living off Mom and Dad's generosity your whole life. It's time to grow up." Living off their generosity. I'd sacrificed 3 years of my life, my career, my relationship, everything I'd worked for to make sure they weren't alone. And she was calling it living off their generosity. I wanted to scream, to throw my coffee mug against the wall, to shake her until she remembered the person she used to be. Instead, I asked the question that was tearing me apart inside.
"Why are you doing this to me?" For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw something raw and bitter flash across her face, something that looked almost like hatred. "Because I'm tired of everyone thinking you're the perfect daughter," she said quietly. "Do you know what it was like watching everyone praise you for moving back home? Listening to Mom and Dad go on and on about how grateful they were for your sacrifice? I have a family, Sarah. I have a husband and a mortgage and responsibilities. I couldn't just drop everything like you did." "I never asked for praise," I whispered. "I just wanted to help them." "No," she said, her voice turning venomous. "You wanted to be the hero. You wanted to be the one they remembered as the good daughter. Well, congratulations, you got what you wanted. Too bad it doesn't come with a house." She turned to the locksmith who'd been standing awkwardly by the door throughout our exchange. "Change the locks," she told him. "All of them." As I watched this stranger begin dismantling the security of my childhood home, I realized that the sister I'd loved and idolized my entire life was gone. The woman standing in our parents' living room was someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of cruelty I'd never imagined possible. "Emma," I said, my voice breaking, "please don't do this. This house, it's all I have left of them." She paused in the doorway, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of the girl who used to braid my hair. But then her expression hardened again. "You should have thought of that before you decided to be such a martyr." 3 days, Sarah. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I packed my entire existence into boxes, surrounded by the ghosts of memories that Emma was about to sell to strangers. I found myself lingering in each room, trying to memorize every detail. The way the afternoon light fell across the kitchen table, the view from my bedroom window, the exact spot where Mom used to sit in her chair. On the final day, as I loaded the last box into my friend's car, I allowed myself one final walk through the empty rooms. In Dad's study, I ran my fingers along the shelves where he'd kept his books, his awards from work, the little trinkets Mom had given him over the years. Everything was going to be sold, scattered to strangers who would never understand what these simple objects had meant to him. That's when I saw it. A tiny corner of paper sticking out from behind one of the drawers in his desk. My first instinct was to ignore it. Emma would be here soon to do a final walkthrough, and I didn't want to give her any reason to accuse me of trying to steal something. But something about the paper nagged at me. I gently pulled on it, and the entire drawer slid out further than it should have, revealing a hidden compartment I'd never noticed before. Inside was a manila envelope yellowed with age, with my father's handwriting on the front. For Sarah. Open only after my death. My hands shook as I opened it, and the first thing I saw was a document that made my blood run cold. Last Will and Testament of Robert James Morrison, revised copy. Revised. The date was 6 months more recent than the will Emma had inherited under. As I read the words, my entire world shifted on its axis. To my daughter Sarah, who sacrificed everything to care for my mother and me in our final years, I leave the family home at 1247 Maple Street and all its contents, knowing that she will honor the love and memories Margaret and I created there. To my daughter Emma, I leave my business investments and the sum of $50,000 with the hope that she will understand why I have made this decision. At the bottom of the document was a note in Dad's shaky handwriting. Sarah, I know Emma may not understand this choice, but you are the one who truly understands what home means. You gave up your life to make sure we were not alone. This house belongs to the daughter who never forgot that family is about love, not obligation. I pray you will forgive me for keeping this secret, but I knew Emma would make things difficult if she knew. Be strong, my dear girl. You deserve this. I stood there in the empty study, holding the document that proved everything Emma had taken from me was rightfully mine. The house, the memories, the legacy our parents had built, it was all supposed to be mine. Emma had inherited under a false will, somehow suppressing the real one. But how? How had she known about the revised will? How had she managed to hide it from the lawyers? Then I remembered something that made my blood run cold. Emma worked as a paralegal at a law firm in the city. She knew the system, knew how to navigate probate court, knew exactly what documents to look for and how to make others disappear. She hadn't just inherited the house by accident, she had stolen it from me. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I couldn't process it at first. This wasn't just sibling rivalry or even ordinary greed. This was systematic theft, planned and executed by someone who had watched me sacrifice everything for our parents and then decided I didn't deserve to be rewarded for that. I heard Emma's car pull into the driveway, and for a moment I considered confronting her right then, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of her cold eyes when she told me to pack my things, or maybe it was the calculating way she spoke about selling the house. Whatever it was, I knew that showing her the real will would only result in her finding a way to destroy it. I slipped the document into my purse and walked out of the house for what I thought would be the last time. Emma was standing in the driveway, checking her phone, probably texting the real estate agent about the sale. "All done?" she asked without looking up. "Yes," I said quietly. "All done." She didn't even say goodbye. As I drove away from Maple Street, I felt something I'd never experienced before. A cold, calculating anger that seemed to settle in my bones. Emma had counted on my passivity, on my tendency to avoid conflict, on my willingness to accept whatever scraps she threw my way. She thought she knew me. She was about to learn how wrong she was.
The cheap motel room smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. I'd been living there for 2 weeks, surrounded by boxes of my childhood, trying to figure out how to use the document I'd found to reclaim what was rightfully mine. But every lawyer I called wanted a retainer I couldn't afford, and the legal aid clinics had waiting lists months long. I was running out of money, running out of hope, and running out of time. Emma had already put the house on the market, and according to the listing I obsessively checked online, there was significant interest from buyers. That's when I realized I needed to understand exactly what Emma had done before I could figure out how to undo it. If she'd used her legal knowledge to suppress Dad's real will, there had to be a paper trail, some evidence of her deception that I could use to expose her. I started with the law firm where the original will had been filed. The receptionist was a sweet older woman named Mrs. Chen, who remembered Emma from when she'd come in to handle her father's affairs. "Such a devoted daughter," Mrs. Chen said, shaking her head sadly. "She was so organized, had all the paperwork ready. Most people are completely overwhelmed when they lose a parent, but Emma had everything under control." What kind of paperwork? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Oh, the will, the death certificate, all the probate documents. She even brought in some of her father's personal papers to help clarify a few things. Very thorough. Personal papers. Emma had been in Dad's study before the will reading, going through his documents. She'd known about the revised will and had somehow convinced the lawyers to use the old one instead. But I needed proof, something concrete that would hold up in court. I started spending my days at the courthouse learning how to navigate the probate record system, tracing every document that had been filed in Dad's case. It was slow, exhausting work, but I was desperate. That's where I met David Martinez, a clerk who worked in the probate office. He was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes and an easy smile. When he saw me struggling with the microfilm machine for the third day in a row, he offered to help. Looking for something specific? He asked, adjusting the focus on the ancient machine. My father's probate case. I'm trying to understand some discrepancies in the will. David's expression grew serious. That's not uncommon, unfortunately. Sometimes families discover documents after probate has been completed. Are you thinking of contesting? Maybe. But I need to understand what happened first. He showed me how to cross-reference the filing dates with the documents themselves, how to track when each piece of paperwork had been submitted and by whom. It was like learning a new language, but slowly a pattern began to emerge. Emma had filed the original will on a Tuesday, but according to the timestamps on the documents, she'd also submitted a request to clarify certain ambiguities in the will on the same day. The request included copies of several documents from Dad's personal papers, documents that would have proven the existence of the revised will. This is interesting, David said, squinting at the screen. She submitted evidence of a later will, but then filed a motion to have it declared invalid due to, questions about the testator's mental capacity at the time of signing. My heart started racing. Mental capacity? According to this, she claimed your father was suffering from dementia when he wrote the revised will, and that he'd been manipulated into changing his original intentions. The room started spinning. Emma hadn't just hidden the revised will, she'd actively worked to have it declared invalid, claiming Dad wasn't mentally competent when he wrote it. But I'd lived with him during his final months. He'd been sad, heartbroken, but completely lucid. He managed his own medications, balanced his checkbook, and had long, coherent conversations about everything from politics to his favorite books. Who would have testified about his mental state? I asked. David scrolled through more documents. Looks like your sister provided an affidavit from Dr. Patricia Hendricks, claiming she'd been treating your father for cognitive decline. Dr. Hendricks? I'd never heard the name before, and I'd accompanied Dad to every medical appointment during his final year. His primary care physician was Dr. Sarah Williams, a woman he'd been seeing for 15 years. There had never been any mention of cognitive issues or dementia. I felt like I was uncovering a conspiracy, but I needed to be careful. Emma had legal training and connections I didn't have. If I was going to expose her, I needed to be absolutely certain of my facts. That night, I called Dr. Williams' office and managed to get an appointment for the following week. I told her I was trying to understand Dad's medical history for my own peace of mind, which wasn't entirely a lie. Dr. Williams was a petite woman with gray hair and a gentle manner. She remembered Dad fondly and was shocked when I told her about the claims of dementia. Your father was one of the most mentally acute patients I've ever had, she said, frowning. Even in his final weeks, he was asking thoughtful questions about his medications and making jokes about getting old. I never saw any signs of cognitive decline. Have you ever heard of Dr. Patricia Hendricks? I asked. She shook her head. I've been practicing in this city for 30 years. I know most of the physicians who specialize in geriatric care, and that name doesn't ring a bell. I left her office with a growing sense of dread. If Dr. Hendricks didn't exist, or if she'd never actually treated Dad, then Emma had committed fraud. But proving it would mean going up against someone who understood the legal system far better than I did. The next few weeks were a blur of phone calls, research, and growing paranoia. I'd discovered that Dr. Patricia Hendricks was a real person, a psychiatrist who practiced in another state and had never treated anyone named Robert Morrison. When I called her office, she was horrified to learn that her name had been used fraudulently. I'd be happy to provide an affidavit stating that I never treated your father. What your sister did could result in serious legal consequences. But as I built my case, I was also losing pieces of myself.
The stress was eating away at my health, my sleep, my ability to trust anyone. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning convinced that Emma was somehow monitoring my activities, that she was already planning to destroy any evidence I might find.
My friendship with David, the probate clerk, was becoming something more than professional, but I found myself unable to trust his kindness. Was he really trying to help me, or was he somehow connected to Emma? The paranoia was consuming me, making me question every interaction, every piece of advice. "You're scaring me," David said one evening when I'd called him for the third time that day, convinced that Emma had somehow accessed my motel room. "Sarah, you need to slow down. This obsession with your sister is destroying you." "She stole my inheritance," I said, my voice shaking. "She committed fraud, David. She destroyed evidence and lied to the court. How can I just let that go?" "I'm not saying you should let it go," he said gently, "but you're not eating, you're not sleeping, and you're starting to see conspiracies everywhere. This isn't healthy." But I couldn't stop. Every day that passed was another day closer to Emma completing the sale of the house. Every day was another day that our parents' legacy was being erased for the sake of her greed. I hired a private investigator named Marcus Webb, using the last of my savings. He was a former police detective who specialized in financial crimes, and he was expensive, but he was also thorough. "Your sister is smart," he told me after a week of investigation. "She covered her tracks well, but she made one mistake. She got greedy." He showed me financial records that painted a devastating picture. Emma hadn't just wanted the house, she'd been systematically looting our parents' assets for months before their deaths. She'd had power of attorney over their finances and had been transferring money to her own accounts, claiming it was for medical expenses and care costs. "She stole nearly $200,000, Marcus said, and she would have gotten away with it if she hadn't tried to take the house too. The financial theft was actually easier to prove than the will fraud. Banks kept detailed records, and Emma had left a clear paper trail of unauthorized transfers. But proving that she knowingly suppressed Dad's real will would be more difficult. The problem is intent," Marcus explained. "She can claim she genuinely believed your father was mentally incompetent when he wrote the revised will. Without clear evidence that she knew she was lying, a prosecutor might not want to pursue criminal charges. But I didn't just want criminal charges. I wanted justice. I wanted Emma to feel the same devastation she put me through. I wanted her to understand what it was like to lose everything you thought you could count on." That's when Marcus suggested something that changed everything. What if we let her complete the sale? What if we wait until she's received the money and spent it, and then we file suit to reclaim the house? The idea was brilliant and cruel in equal measure. If Emma sold the house under a fraudulent will, she'd be liable for the full sale price plus damages. If she'd already spent the money, she'd be financially ruined. She'll have to buy the house back from whoever purchases it. If she can't afford to do that, she'll lose everything: her savings, her own home, maybe even her marriage. That's exactly the kind of calculated revenge that Emma had inflicted on me. She'd let me invest 3 years of my life in caring for our parents, then stripped away everything I'd gained from that sacrifice. Now I had the chance to let her celebrate her victory before destroying her completely. But the cost of pursuing this path was becoming clearer every day. I'd lost weight, developed chronic insomnia, and started having panic attacks whenever I saw a car that looked like Emma's. My obsession with revenge was consuming me, turning me into someone I didn't recognize. David stopped returning my calls after I accused him of being in contact with Emma. My few remaining friends grew tired of my single-minded focus on the case. I was becoming isolated, bitter, and increasingly unstable. "You need to ask yourself if this is worth it," my therapist said during one of our sessions. "What are you hoping to gain from all this?" "Justice," I said immediately. "She can't just get away with what she did." "But what about your life?" she asked. "You've been living in a motel room for 6 months. You haven't looked for work. You haven't maintained any relationships. You're so focused on punishing your sister that you've forgotten how to live." I knew she was right, but I couldn't stop. The need for revenge had become like an addiction, a compulsion that overrode every other consideration. I'd started having dreams about confronting Emma, about watching her face when she realized what I'd done to her. The fantasy of her destruction was the only thing that brought me any peace.
Meanwhile, the house sale was moving forward. Emma had accepted an offer from a young couple with 2 small children, people who reminded me painfully of what I had once hoped to have with my ex-boyfriend. They were planning to renovate the kitchen, to turn Dad's study into a playroom, and to paint over the growth charts Mom had marked on the closet door. I watched from my car as they walked through the house with their real estate agent, pointing excitedly at features that held decades of memories for me. The woman was pregnant with their 3rd child, and I could see her imagining the life she'd build in the rooms where I grew up. For a moment, I wondered if I was doing the right thing. These people had done nothing wrong. They'd saved money, found a house they loved, and were planning to create their own family legacy there. When I reclaimed the house, I'd be destroying their dreams too. But then I thought about Emma, probably already planning how to spend the money she'd stolen from me, and my resolute hardened. She'd set this chain of events in motion when she decided to betray me. Whatever happened to innocent people along the way was her responsibility, not mine. The closing was scheduled for a Thursday in March. I spent the morning of the sale parked outside the law office, watching Emma arrive in her BMW, wearing a new coat that probably cost more than I'd spent on food in the past month. She looked relaxed, happy even, like someone who'd finally gotten everything she'd ever wanted. I followed her to lunch afterwards, watching her celebrate with her husband at an expensive restaurant downtown. They ordered champagne and talked animatedly about their plans for the money: a vacation to Europe, renovations to their own home, private school for their children. That afternoon, I called Marcus and told him to file the lawsuit. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back. Your sister's life is going to be completely destroyed." "I'm sure," I said, and for the first time in months, I felt something approaching peace. The next phase of my revenge was about to begin.
The lawsuit hit Emma like a lightning bolt on a clear day. I wasn't there when the papers were served, but Marcus had hired a process server to record the encounter. I watched the video dozens of times, studying Emma's face as she read the complaint, watching her confident smile crumble into confusion and then terror. "Mrs. Patterson," the process server said, "you're being sued for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and wrongful appropriation of real estate." Emma's hands shook as she held the papers. "There must be some mistake," she said, her voice barely audible. "I inherited that house legally. I have the will." "Ma'am, you'll need to respond through your attorney," the process server said. "You have 30 days. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I was sitting in a conference room at Marcus's law firm, watching Emma's attorney try to convince my legal team that this was all a misunderstanding. "My client acted in good faith," the attorney was saying. "She genuinely believed her father was mentally incompetent when he wrote the revised will. She was trying to protect his true intentions." "Then why did she forge Dr. Hedrick's signature?" Marcus asked calmly. "Why did she claim to have medical records that don't exist?" Emma's attorney shuffled through his papers, clearly struggling. "Those were administrative errors. My client never intended to. Your client stole $200,000 from her parents' accounts. She fabricated medical evidence. She knowingly filed a fraudulent will. These aren't administrative errors, counsel. These are felonies." Across the table, Emma looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, and her hands trembled every time she reached for her water glass. But it was her husband's expression that really struck me. He kept staring at Emma like he was seeing her for the first time, like he was trying to reconcile the woman he'd married with the person being described in the lawsuit. "I think my clients need a moment to discuss this privately," Emma's attorney said. As they filed out of the conference room, Emma looked directly at me for the first time since this whole process began. The hatred in her eyes was so intense, it made me physically recoil. "You're destroying innocent people," she said quietly. "That family with the children, they're going to lose their home because of you." "They're going to lose their home because of you," I replied. "You're the one who sold them a house you didn't own." "I owned it legally," she said. "That will was filed in probate court. I followed every procedure." "You followed procedures using forged documents. You lied to the court, you lied to the lawyers, and you lied to me. You watched me pack my life into boxes and leave the house where I grew up, knowing that you'd stolen it from me." For a moment, her mask completely slipped. "You want to know the truth?" she said, her voice raw with emotion. "I was jealous. I was so fucking jealous of you that I couldn't see straight." Her husband grabbed her arm. "Emma, don't!" "No," she said, shaking him off. "She wants to destroy me. She should at least know why I did it." She turned back to me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not just anger, but pain. Deep, old pain that had been festering for years. "Do you know what it was like growing up in your shadow?" she asked. "You were always the sweet one, the helpful one, the one who never caused any trouble. Mom and Dad talked about you like you were some kind of saint. Sarah's so thoughtful, Sarah's so caring, Sarah always knows just what to say. Emma, Emma, you never tried to anything. That's what made it so much worse. You were perfect without even trying. Do you know what they said about me? Emma's so ambitious. Emma's so driven. Emma's going to be successful. Like success was a consolation prize for not being lovable." Her words hit me like physical blows. I had no idea she felt this way, no idea that our parents' different expectations had created such deep resentment. "When Dad died," she continued, "I thought maybe I could finally have something that you couldn't take away from me. The house, the inheritance, it was supposed to be my consolation prize for not being the favorite. But then I found that revised will, and I realized he'd given you everything. Even in death, you were still the perfect daughter. So you decided to steal it from me. I decided to take what should have been mine all along. I'm the older daughter. I'm the one with the stable marriage and the successful career. I'm the one who made something of herself. Why should you get everything just because you were willing to sacrifice your life to take care of them?" Her husband was staring at her in horror. "Emma, you stole from your own sister. You committed fraud." "I corrected an injustice," she said. "Sarah gave up her life to play martyr, and Dad rewarded her for it. Well, I have a family too. I have children who need college funds and a husband who deserves better than a cramped apartment. Why should Sarah get a house she can't even afford to maintain?" "Because it was mine," I said quietly. "It was legally, rightfully mine. And you took it from me. And you're taking everything from me," she said. "My savings, my reputation, my marriage. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than anger. Emma was right about one thing. I was destroying her. The lawsuit would bankrupt her, the criminal charges would ruin her career, and the scandal would probably end her marriage. Her children would grow up knowing their mother was a criminal. But what struck me most was how small she looked. This woman who had seemed so powerful, so calculating, so in control, was actually just a damaged person who made terrible choices because she felt unloved. "I wanted justice," I said finally. "I wanted you to understand what it felt like to lose everything."
"Well, congratulations," she said bitterly. "You're about to get your wish." Her attorney returned to the room, looking defeated. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to be honest with you. The evidence against you is overwhelming. The district attorney's office has already indicated they are considering criminal charges. If you don't settle this civil case, you're looking at potential jail time." Emma's husband stood up abruptly. "I need some air," he said, and walked out of the room without looking back. "My marriage is over," Emma said quietly, watching him leave. 20 years, and it's over because I couldn't stand being second best to my baby sister. For the first time since I found Dad's hidden will, I felt a flicker of doubt. Was this what I really wanted? To watch Emma's entire life crumble because she'd made a desperate choice, born out of decades of feeling inadequate? "There's still time to work something out," Marcus said carefully. "If Emma agrees to return the house and repay the stolen funds, we might be able to avoid criminal charges." "With what money?" Emma laughed bitterly. "I spent most of it on the down payment for our new house. The rest went to pay off credit cards and my daughter's private school tuition. I don't have $200,000 to pay back." "Then you'll have to sell your house," Marcus said simply. "That house is my children's home," Emma said, her voice breaking. "They've lived there for 8 years.
My daughter's graduating high school next month. My son has autism, and changes in routine devastate him. You're asking me to uproot my entire family because of a mistake I made? A mistake, I said, my anger flaring again. You systematically stole from me for months. You forged documents, you lied to lawyers, you threw me out of my childhood home. That wasn't a mistake, Emma. That was a calculated crime. You're right, she said, and the admission seemed to deflate her completely. It was all of those things. But I'm not the only one who's going to pay for it. My husband is talking about divorce, my kids are going to lose their home, my career is ruined. The punishment doesn't fit the crime, Sarah. Doesn't it? I asked. You took my home, my inheritance, my sense of security. You made me question everything I believed about family and love. You turned the last connection I had to our parents into a weapon to hurt me. How is losing your house any different from what you did to me? Because I have children, she said desperately. They're innocent in all this. They don't deserve to suffer because their mother made a terrible choice. And there it was, the argument I'd been dreading. Emma's children were innocent. They'd done nothing wrong, yet they were about to lose their home, their sense of security, possibly their family unit. My need for revenge wasn't just hurting Emma, it was destroying the lives of two teenagers who had no say in any of this. I'll need some time to think about this, I said, standing up from the table. Time is something we don't have much of, Marcus warned. The family who bought your parents' house is threatening their own lawsuit. They want their money back immediately, or they're going to file criminal charges against Emma for fraud. As I left the law firm, I felt the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. I'd set this chain of events in motion, and now it was spiraling beyond my control. Emma's children, the innocent family who'd bought the house, Emma's husband. They were all casualties in a war that started with sibling rivalry decades ago. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Emma's words, about the pain in her voice when she'd admitted her jealousy. Had I really been oblivious to her feelings all these years? Had I somehow contributed to the resentment that had driven her to such desperate measures? I thought about her childhood, trying to see it through her eyes. I remembered the way Mom used to praise me for being such a good helper when I cleaned my room without being asked. I remembered Dad bragging to his friends about my good grades, while Emma's achievements were always qualified with comments about how hard she'd worked for them. At the time, I thought I was just being responsible, trying to make our parents proud. But maybe Emma was right. Maybe I had been the favorite, and maybe that favoritism had damaged her in ways I'd never understood. But did that justify what she'd done? Did childhood jealousy excuse fraud and theft? Did her pain give her the right to cause me even greater pain? I found myself driving to Maple Street at 2 a.m, parking outside the house where we'd grown up. The new owners had already started making changes. There were different curtains in the windows, a swing set in the backyard, a minivan in the driveway where Dad used to park his old sedan. The house looked happy. It looked like a home again, not a museum of memories. These people were building their own legacy there, creating new traditions in the rooms where Emma and I had once played together. If I went through with the lawsuit, I'd be forcing them to leave. Their children would have to change schools, abandon friends, start over somewhere new. And for what? So I could live alone in a house full of ghosts? I thought about Dad's note, about his hope that I would honor the love and memories he and Mom had created there. Would destroying innocent lives honor their memory? Would turning our childhood home into a battlefield between sisters be what they would have wanted? But then, I thought about Emma's smug smile when she'd told me to pack my things. I thought about the months of living in a motel room, the stress and paranoia that had consumed me, the relationships I'd lost in my pursuit of justice. Emma knew exactly what she was doing when she stole from me. She calculated the cost and decided my suffering was worth it. The next morning, I called Marcus and told him I wanted to proceed with the lawsuit. "Are you sure? Once we get a judgment, there's no going back. Emma will be financially ruined." "I'm sure," I said. But even as I said it, I wasn't entirely convinced. The trial was set for 2 months later. In the meantime, Emma's life continued to unravel. Her husband filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting full custody of their children. Her law firm placed her on administrative leave pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. The family who'd bought the house was threatening to sue everyone involved, including the title company and the original probate attorney.
Emma tried to call me several times, but I didn't answer. I was afraid that hearing her voice would weaken my resolve, that she'd find some way to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. I'd already sacrificed too much to her games. I wasn't going to let her talk her way out of the consequences of her actions. But 3 weeks before the trial, something happened that changed everything. I was having dinner alone at a diner near my motel when I overheard a conversation at the next table. A woman was talking to her friend about her divorce, about how her husband's legal troubles had destroyed their family. The worst part is the kids, she was saying. They don't understand why Daddy can't live with us anymore, why we have to move to a smaller apartment. My daughter keeps asking if it's her fault, if she did something wrong. Something about the woman's voice was familiar. I turned around and saw Emma's husband sitting with someone I didn't recognize. He looked terrible, thin, exhausted, like he hadn't slept in weeks. I thought I knew her, he was saying. 20 years of marriage, and I had no idea she was capable of something like this. How do you explain to your children that their mother is a criminal? What's going to happen to Emma? His companion asked. She'll probably go to prison, he said quietly. Her lawyer thinks she might get 5 years, maybe more if they prosecute all the charges. The kids will be teenagers when she gets out. If she gets out. They'll grow up knowing their mother chose money over family. I felt sick. In all my planning for revenge, I'd focused on Emma's suffering, not on the collateral damage to people who loved her. Her children were going to lose their mother, their home, their sense of security. Her husband was going to raise them alone, always knowing that the woman he'd loved had been capable of destroying everything they'd built together. The sister could stop this, his companion said. She could drop the lawsuit. She won't, Emma's husband replied, and honestly, I don't blame her. What Emma did was unforgivable. But I keep thinking about our son. He's only 14, and he's autistic. This kind of upheaval is going to set him back years. He's already started having meltdowns at school because he knows something's wrong at home. I left the diner feeling like I was going to throw up. This was what my revenge looked like in the real world. Not just Emma suffering, but innocent children being traumatized, a family being destroyed, lives being ruined. That night, I called my therapist for an emergency session. I think I need to drop the lawsuit, I said. What's changed? She asked. I'm destroying innocent people. Emma's children, her husband, the family who bought the house, they're all paying the price for something they didn't do. But Emma did do it, my therapist pointed out. She stole from you. She lied to you. She threw you out of your childhood home. Don't you deserve justice? I thought I did, but what I'm getting isn't justice. It's revenge. And revenge is just another form of destruction. So what do you want to do? I thought about it for a long moment. I want to make this right, I said finally. Not just for me, but for everyone who's been hurt by this whole situation. The next day, I called Marcus and told him I wanted to settle the case. Sarah, we're about to win. Emma's attorney is talking about a plea deal. She'll admit to everything, pay restitution, and you'll get the house back. This is what we've been working toward. And what happens to her children? I asked. That's not our concern, he said. Emma should have thought about her children before she decided to commit fraud. But they're my concern, I said. They're my niece and nephew. They're family. Family? Marcus said incredulously. Emma didn't treat you like family when she threw you out of your childhood home. No, she didn't. I agreed. But that doesn't mean I have to be like her. I hung up and called Emma's attorney directly. I want to make a deal, but not the kind you're expecting. 2 days later, Emma and I met at a coffee shop halfway between our two cities. She looked like she'd been through hell. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had lost so much weight that her face looked gaunt. I'm surprised you wanted to see me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper.
I've been thinking about what you said, I replied, about feeling like you were never enough, about growing up in my shadow. I never realized how much you were hurting. That doesn't excuse what I did, she said. I stole from you, Sarah. I lied to you. I threw you out of your own home. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not, but your children deserve better than having their mother in prison. She looked up at me, hope flickering in her eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want to make a deal. But not through lawyers. Just between us, sister to sister. I pulled out a piece of paper and slid it across the table. This is what I'm proposing. Emma read it carefully, her hands shaking. You want me to deed the house back to you, return what's left of the money, and publicly admit what I did? In exchange, I'll drop the lawsuit and ask the prosecutor not to file criminal charges. You'll lose your job, but you won't go to prison. Your children won't have to grow up without their mother. What about the family who bought the house? I'll let them stay. I'll deed the house to them for what they paid for it. I don't need to live there anymore. Emma stared at me. You're giving up everything you fought for. I'm giving up revenge, but I'm keeping something more important. The ability to look at myself in the mirror and recognize the person I see there. She started crying then, ugly sobs that shook her entire body. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm so fucking sorry for what I did to you. I was jealous and bitter, and I let it turn me into someone I don't recognize. We both did things we don't recognize. The question is, what do we do now? I don't know how to fix this, she said. I don't know how to make it right. We start by telling the truth. All of it. To your husband, to your children, to everyone who's been hurt by this whole situation. And then we figure out how to be sisters again. Emma signed the agreement that afternoon. The next week, she held a press conference where she admitted to everything. The fraud, the theft, the lies. She apologized to me, to the family who'd bought the house, to everyone who'd been affected by her actions. Her husband still divorced her, but he allowed her to maintain joint custody of her children. She lost her job, but she found work as a paralegal at a small firm that was willing to overlook her past. She had to sell her house and move to a smaller apartment, but she was free. The family who'd bought our parents' house was allowed to keep it. I visited them once just to see how they were settling in. The woman was hanging pictures in the hallway, and I could see her children playing in the backyard where Emma and I had once built snow forts. This is a good house, she said when I introduced myself. You can feel the love in it. Yes, you can.
6 months later, I was living in a small apartment across town, working as a victim's advocate for a nonprofit organization. The work was meaningful, helping people navigate the legal system, providing support to those who'd been hurt by crimes similar to what Emma had done to me. But the cost of my pursuit of justice was still evident in every aspect of my life. I'd lost 2 years to obsession and revenge. 2 years that I could have spent rebuilding my career, my relationships, my sense of self. The paranoia and sleeplessness had left me with chronic anxiety that required medication to manage. My friendship with David, the probate clerk, never recovered from my accusations and distrust. Most painfully, I'd lost my faith in family. Every interaction with Emma, even now that we were trying to reconcile, was colored by the knowledge of what she'd been capable of. I found myself analyzing her words, looking for hidden meanings, wondering if her apologies were genuine or just another manipulation. Emma was struggling too. Her children had forgiven her, but they'd lost respect for her that might never be fully restored. Her ex-husband was civil but distant, and she told me that she sometimes caught him looking at her like he was still trying to figure out who she really was. I destroyed my life for nothing, she said during one of our awkward coffee meetings. I didn't even get to keep the house. All I did was hurt people I loved. It wasn't for nothing, I said. You got to feel superior for a while. You got to be the successful sister, the one who'd won. For 6 months, she said bitterly, 6 months of feeling like I'd finally beaten you, and then it all came crashing down. The thing is, I said, you never needed to beat me. I never thought we were in competition. I know that now, but I didn't know it then. I was so focused on what I thought I deserved that I couldn't see what I already had.
We sat in silence for a moment. Two sisters who destroyed each other over a house that neither of us would ever live in again. "Do you think we'll ever be okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I want to forgive you, but I don't know if I can trust you again. And I think you're still angry that I won." I didn't win. Nobody won. We both lost everything that mattered. She was right. In pursuing justice, I'd become someone I didn't recognize. Paranoid, obsessive, willing to destroy innocent people to get what I wanted. In trying to reclaim what was mine, I'd lost pieces of myself that I might never get back. Emma had lost even more. Her marriage, her career, her self-respect, her children's trust, all sacrificed for a house and money that she'd never really been able to enjoy because she'd known they were stolen. "I keep thinking about Mom and Dad," Emma said, "about what they'd think if they knew what we'd done to each other." "They'd be heartbroken," I said. "They built that house to be a home for their family, and we turned it into a battlefield." "Maybe that's why Dad hid the revised will," Emma said. "Maybe he knew something like this would happen if I found out about it. Or maybe he just wanted to reward the daughter who'd sacrificed everything for him. Maybe he thought he was being fair." "Fair?" Emma laughed bitterly. "There's nothing fair about any of this. Fair would have been him sitting us down and explaining his decision. Fair would have been him making sure we both understood why he was doing what he was doing. Fair would have been you not stealing from me." "Yes," she agreed. "That too." We finished our coffee in silence. Two women who'd once been sisters, now trying to figure out how to be strangers who cared about each other. The process of rebuilding took years. I spent a lot of time in therapy, working through the anger and paranoia that had consumed me during my pursuit of revenge. I learned to recognize the warning signs of obsessive thinking, to step back when I felt myself getting too focused on injustices and slights. Emma went through her own healing process. She attended support groups for people who'd committed white-collar crimes, worked with a therapist to understand the insecurities that had driven her to such desperate measures. She slowly rebuilt her relationship with her children, earning back their trust through consistency and honesty. Our relationship remained complicated. We saw each other occasionally, usually at family gatherings involving Emma's children. The conversations were stilted, careful, both of us walking on eggshells around topics that might trigger old hurts. But there were moments of genuine connection. When Emma's son graduated high school, she called me crying with pride and regret. She said, "I almost missed this. I almost threw away the chance to see him grow up because I was so focused on what I thought I deserved." "But you didn't miss it," I said. "You're here now." "Because you let me be," she said. "You could have sent me to prison, Sarah. You could have destroyed me completely. Why didn't you?" I thought about it for a moment. "Because destroying you wouldn't have brought Mom and Dad back. It wouldn't have made the house feel like home again. It would have just created more pain." "I don't know if I would have been as generous," she said. "You weren't in a position to be generous," I said. "You were desperate and hurt and making terrible choices because of it. I was in a position to choose mercy, so I did." "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said honestly. "When I'm paying rent instead of living in a house I inherited. When I remember how smug you looked when you told me to pack my things. When I think about how you watched me suffer and decided I deserved it." "I'm sorry," she said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. "I'm so sorry for what I did to you." "I know. And I'm sorry for what I almost did to you. You were just trying to get back what was yours." "I was trying to destroy you," I said. "Let's be honest about that. I wanted to watch you lose everything, the way you'd made me lose everything. That's not justice, Emma. That's just revenge." "Maybe I deserved it." "Maybe you did," I said. "But your children didn't. Your husband didn't. The family who bought the house didn't. And somewhere along the way, I realized that revenge isn't about giving people what they deserve. It's about making yourself feel better about what they did to you." "Did it work?" she asked. "Did you feel better?" "No," I said. "I felt worse. I felt like I was becoming someone I didn't want to be. That conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. We began to talk more openly about what had happened, about the pain we had caused each other, about the childhood experiences that had shaped our destructive choices.
Emma told me about growing up feeling like she was never quite good enough, about the pressure she'd felt to be perfect because she thought that was the only way to earn love. I told her about the guilt I'd carried about being the favorite, about how I'd never understood the cost of that favoritism until it was too late. I think we both grew up in the same house, but lived completely different childhoods, Emma said during one of our conversations. Maybe that's true for all siblings, I said. Maybe we all experience family differently, even when we're living in the same rooms. Do you think we'll ever be close again? She asked. I don't know, I said, but I think we can be honest with each other. That's something. 3 years after the lawsuit was settled, Emma called me with news that would have once filled me with rage, but now just made me sad. I'm getting remarried, she said. His name is David, and he's a good man. He knows about everything that happened, and he's willing to help me build something new. That's wonderful, I said, and I meant it. I'm happy for you. Are you? She asked. Really? Yes, I said. I want you to be happy, Emma. I want you to have a good life. Even after everything I did to you? Especially after everything you did to me, I said, because I know how much pain you were in when you did it. I don't want you to be in that kind of pain anymore. We were both crying by the end of the conversation. Not the bitter tears of anger and regret, but the cleansing tears of forgiveness and hope. The wedding was small, just Emma, her new husband, her children, and me. As I watched her exchange vows, I thought about how different our lives might have been if we'd been able to talk honestly about our feelings years earlier, if we'd been able to see past our childhood roles to the real people underneath. But we can't change the past. We can only learn from it and try to make different choices going forward. During the reception, Emma's son, my nephew, asked me to dance. He was 18 now, about to start college, a young man who'd survived his parents' divorce and his mother's legal troubles with remarkable resilience. I'm glad you didn't let Mom go to prison, he said as we swayed to the music. I'm glad too, I said. She told me what she did to you, how she stole your house. That was really messed up. Yes, it was, I said, but people sometimes do messed up things when they're hurting. The important thing is that she learned from it and changed. Did you forgive her? I thought about it. Still working on it, I said. Forgiveness isn't something that happens all at once. It's a choice you make over and over again. That sounds hard, he said. It is hard, I said, but it's worth it because the alternative is carrying anger around forever, and that's much harder. As the evening wound down, Emma and I found ourselves alone on the hotel terrace, looking out over the city lights. Thank you, she said quietly, for being here, for giving me a chance to have this. Thank you for not giving up, for doing the work to become someone who deserves this. I'm still working on it, she said. Every day I have to choose to be better than I was. We all do, I said. That's what makes us human. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two sisters who'd almost destroyed each other, but had chosen healing instead. I miss them, Emma said suddenly. Mom and Dad. I miss them so much. I miss them too, I said. But I think they'd be proud of us now. Not for what we accomplished, but for how we chose to treat each other in the end. Do you think they're watching? She asked. I don't know, I said. But if they are, I think they're finally at peace. Emma reached over and took my hand. I love you, Sarah. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I do love you. I love you too. And that's why this was also devastating. You can't hurt someone this deeply unless you love them. I won't hurt you like that again, she said. I promise. I know, and I promise I won't try to destroy you again either. Good, she said, squeezing my hand, because we're all we have left now. No, I said, looking through the window at her new husband, her children, the life she'd built despite everything. No, we have much more than that. So,
that's my story. Two sisters who almost destroyed each other over a house that neither of us ended up living in. I could have sent Emma to prison, taken everything she had, and felt justified in doing it. But I learned something important during those dark months when I was consumed by revenge. Justice isn't about making other people suffer for what they did to you. It's about creating a world where that kind of suffering doesn't have to continue. Emma stole from me, lied to me, and betrayed me in the worst possible way. But I chose mercy over revenge, and in doing so, I saved not just her life, but my own soul. Because the person I was becoming in my pursuit of justice was someone I didn't want to be. Someone consumed by anger, paranoia, and the need to inflict pain. Today, Emma and I aren't the sisters we once were. We probably never will be again, but we're something else now. Two people who've seen the worst in each other and chosen to build something better from the wreckage. The house on Maple Street is still there, still filled with the laughter of children, still a home where love lives. That's what our parents would have wanted, not for their daughters to wage war over their legacy, but for that legacy to continue bringing joy to families who need it. I want to know, what's the most difficult forgiveness you've ever had to give? Have you ever chosen mercy when you could have chosen revenge? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Sometimes the most powerful victory isn't defeating your enemies, it's refusing to let them turn you into someone you don't want to be. Thanks for listening. And remember, family is complicated, but love is always worth fighting for, even when it's hard.